All right, let's jump right into this explainer. If you're sitting there feeling like you're living through a financial crisis, but every time you turn on the news, they're telling you the economy is booming, well, you're not crazy. Today, we're looking at a massive, overarching contradiction right at the heart of our current financial system. We are exploring an economy that, on paper, looks incredibly wealthy. I mean, by the numbers, it is literally one of the richest moments in the history of the country. Yet for the average person, it feels like they are grinding through a full-blown financial crisis. So how can both of these things be true at the exact same time? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack. The sheer scale of this disconnect is staggering. On one hand, you've got the stock market hitting its 23rd record high this year alone. Net worth has never been larger. But on the other hand, consumer sentiment, how people actually feel about their day-to-day financial reality, has fallen to its lowest level ever recorded. It is lower than during the pandemic lockdowns, lower than the 2008 global financial crisis, and yes, even lower than the early 1980s recession. We have to figure out why the data and the everyday reality are telling two completely opposite stories. To really wrap our heads around this, let's look at maybe the most boring account in America, the 401k. On average, 401k balances just hit a record high of over $160,000. Sounds great, right? But here is the catch. In the very same year that retirement balances hit that record, a record number of people were actively raiding those accounts. About 6% of savers cashed out early. They're willingly eating steep financial penalties and taxes just to get immediate access to their cash. And that rate is roughly triple what we saw before the pandemic.
And look, people aren't draining their retirements to go on luxury vacations. 36% of these early withdrawals are literally just to avoid eviction or foreclosure. Another 31% are for sudden medical expenses, and 13% go toward tuition. These are desperate moves by everyday people trying to avoid an immediate disaster. They're pulling the ripcord on their future just to survive the present.
So what's actually going on here? How do we solve this paradox of a booming market and struggling citizens? Well, we have to look at exactly whose accounts are actually growing when the stock market prints another record high. The trillions of dollars created during a market climb don't just fall on everyone evenly like rain. The top 10% of wealthiest households own a staggering 87% of all the stocks. The middle 40% owns just 12%. And the bottom half of the country, the teachers, the nurses, the bus drivers, roughly 67 million households, they own just 1% of the stock market combined. Let's put some actual dollars to those percentages, because the scale of this gap is just impossible. Say the market returns 16% in a year. For the bottom half of the country, whose median holdings are around $13,000, that's a paper gain of about $2,000. But for the top 10%, whose median holdings sit around $600,000, that exact same 16% market return hands them over $96,000. While market participation might technically be democratized, the dollars certainly are not. A booming market leaves the bottom half fighting for absolute scraps. This brings us to a completely new way to visualize our economic system. You can go ahead and forget about that old K-shaped recovery model, winners going up, losers going down. The true shape of the American economy today is an E. Picture a capital letter E. The top bar is stretched way out. These are the asset owners. The middle bar is tilted, sloping downward. That's the middle class. And the bottom bar is just left flat on the floor, the struggling majority. We're looking at three distinct classes living completely separate financial realities. All right, let's start with part one, the asset owners. So this top tier represents the richest 10%, and they are capturing almost all the gains of this so-called booming economy. This group has watched their net worth absolutely explode in recent years. Why? Simply because they already own the assets that are rapidly inflating. Since 2020, the stock market is up over 120%, and home prices are up around 55%. If you already held the keys to the castle, the real estate, and the equities, you've pulled entirely away from the rest of the pack. The headlines of a booming economy are absolutely 100% real for this specific group. Moving on to part two, the middle class. This is the middle bar of our E-shaped economy, and these are the households quietly and steadily losing their financial footing. The absolutely crucial point here is the quiet squeeze happening to wages. You might look at the data and say, wait a minute, the consumer is strong, average hourly earnings went up 3.6% last month from a year earlier. And sure, that sounds like a raise. But over that exact same stretch, inflation was up 3.8%, which means that hard-earned raise was eaten entirely by inflation before a single dollar was even spent. When prices are up over 28% since the start of 2020, the middle class is just constantly losing ground. To really anchor this downward trend, just look at where people are actually spending their money now. Heather Long, the chief economist at Navy Federal Credit Union, perfectly summarized this shift. She notes a pronounced migration away from premium shopping experiences toward discount stores like Costco, Walmart, and Aldi. And look, we all love a good Costco hot dog for sure, but this isn't a fun weekend trip. This is a fundamental lifestyle downgrade just to keep their heads above water. They still have a thin layer of breathing room left, but they can feel like getting thinner and thinner by the day. Which brings us to part 3, the struggling majority. This is the harsh reality for the bottom half of the country. This is that flat bar stuck right on the floor, doing whatever it takes just to survive. So if the average person's finances are so grim, how is consumer spending still holding up? The answer is debt. American consumers are now carrying a staggering $1.25 trillion in credit card debt. And this money isn't cheap. The average interest rate on these cards is sitting around 23%. People aren't spending because they're flush with cash. They're spending from the future. And we need to be incredibly clear about what's actually going on those credit cards. As Mike Croxson from the National Foundation for Credit Counseling warns, this is a disturbing shift to survival debt. Everyday people are no longer financing a luxury vacation or a new flat-screen TV. 33% of people carrying a balance cite day-to-day expenses as the primary source of their debt. They are borrowing at 23% interest just to keep the lights on and the pantry stocked, which is a deeply, deeply concerning cycle. And this normalization of financing basic everyday needs, it extends way beyond traditional credit cards. Just look at the absolute explosion of buy now, pay later services. It's not just for concert tickets or sneakers anymore. Over 90 million Americans use these services now. More than a quarter of them are using it to buy groceries. Just let that sink in for a second. People are splitting a weekly grocery trip into 4 installments. And over 50% of users report they literally could not make ends meet without it. Now, if you're wondering what happens when the emergency fund totally runs dry, you just have to look at the savings rate. For the country overall, personal savings have dropped to a near record low of 2.6%. But for the bottom half of the country, more than 65 million households, the monthly savings rate isn't just low, it's actually negative. That means the bottom half of America is spending more than they bring in after taxes. They're running a loss every single month, sinking deeper into a financial hole with absolutely no safety net to catch them.
So let's look at Section 4, a widening wealth gap in a fractured economy.
When you bring all 3 of these completely distinct groups back together, the brutal mathematics of this divide become super clear. The top 10% holds 68% of the total net worth and takes in over half the income. The middle 40% holds 29% of the wealth and earns about a third of the income. And the bottom 50%, literally half of the entire country, is left fighting over a mere 2.5% of the total net worth, taking home just roughly 10% of the income. This gap isn't holding steady either. It is actively stretching wider. And this is exactly why the headlines about a booming economy and the reality of your own bank account might feel like they never line up. When you add up all the wealth, sure, the charts go up and to the right, but the charts don't tell you who is holding the money. We are living in the same country, but completely different Americas, occupying very different bars on that E-shaped economy. So I leave you with this to reflect on. In this fractured economic reality, where exactly do you stand?